All right, I think we're live. Look at that. So we're at the StartX office here in Palo Alto in person. For people not watching the video and just listening remotely, we're actually here in person. So you should watch the video. This is actually a pretty pro setup. This is that next level. I love it. Look, we got the water, we got the microphone. It's me laughing for like 5 minutes straight.
So what's on your mind, Phil?
Getting straight to business. This is like an interview session. I guess, I mean, I have something that I could talk about, but I'm just wondering what, if you have a lingering that you want to.
I hear you. What's on your mind?
Like a gambit. I guess two things. I don't know. I mean, this is kind of unrelated, but I've been watching Magnus Carlsen chess things lately. I've just been watching his like chess videos for some reason.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not that into chess, but I just like watching videos.
Which ones in particular?
I don't know. I mean, just kind of like watching his story and like him playing like the grandmasters and stuff, and him getting really mad and things like outtakes.
Did you see the documentary Magnus?
I don't know I think I probably saw parts of it. I probably saw like segments of it and stuff, but that's along the lines of like watching Mike Tyson documentaries.
Because I'm kind of a fan. Did you see the 60 Minutes?
Yeah, I think I saw that. I think I saw the 60 Minutes. I think we've seen all the same videos. There's Magnus, there's Mike Tyson, other child prodigy videos, but that wasn't really what's on my mind. I guess the big thing on my mind would be that we're here in person now. So I drove up yesterday or today, from San Diego up to the Bay Area, and this week I'm just taking as a true vacation, and like the real sense of the word. Like I have absolutely no work meetings. I'm trying not to do any work. Of course, there's going to be emails and stuff that fly in, so I'm not like totally immune to stuff. But yeah, and I was thinking back, and this is like the first. I would say this is the first like real quote unquote vacation I've taken in like ever since I decided to go back in academia 5 years ago. Like
wow,
it's insane. Like to think of it. I mean, I'm not especially proud of that. I'm not saying that should be the norm, but that's just what it is. It's like very weird as I was driving up. Thinking about it, yeah, it's just it's kind of surreal, but like the 5 years just passed by really fast, so I never really noticed.
What about visiting family?
So I don't. Yeah, that's a great thing. So I don't count that under vacation. I mean, I count that under like organized activity.
Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously visiting family, also like going to friends' weddings. I've been traveling. So what was the travel that I've been doing? It's been mostly work travel, right? Well, job interviews, and then like conferences. Work travel, and then weddings, friends' weddings, and then like family stuff, right? Going to see family. But yeah, so not counting, things with organized events. I think this is like the first one, like for real, where I can really clear my mind. I'm not like, I mean, even family things and like friends things, it's like, okay, we're doing a Thanksgiving dinner, or like we're going to a wedding banquet and a rehearsal dinner and stuff. And it's fun, of course. And, even with work trips, it's fun because I get to hang out with people, and then I can extend the trip and be sightseeing and stuff. But like, it's weird that there was like absolutely no like real agenda for this week.
Do you crave it?
I haven't really until now. I mean, it wasn't like I was like, oh man, I went on vacation for 5 years. I never could take one. Such a great. It just, the time just kind of flew by. But it felt like the right time to kind of do it, I guess. I mean, it wasn't like planned that far, right?
And is there any, like for me personally, if I have time off, naturally I just start thinking about work. Do you struggle with that, or you doing okay?
Yeah, we seem like real losers in this podcast. No, it's so true. I mean, I was driving up, and I was listening to one of Roger Peng's podcasts, to plug his podcast. I have these wireless headphones. Really good for driving, by the way. So you just like stick them in like your ear, and then you don't have a wire and stuff. And I was listening to one of his podcasts about data science. He has a podcast called Not So Standard Deviations with Dr. Hillary Parker, and they both just talk about data science type topics. Now, she's a data scientist at Stitch Fix, at a recently public company, and he's a statistics professor at Johns Hopkins, and they talk about like data science stuff, right? And they were talking about Excel, and without getting too much in the details, I was like, I was like, I'm not thinking about work at all. This is just kind of fun listening to it. And I was like, things start turning my head. I'm like, oh man, I was like doing some things with Excel recently and spreadsheets and thinking about like programming and stuff. And I'm like, man, there's like some kind of interesting research ideas bubbling up, and then I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna nip it in the bud because like, all right, I'm not feeling this, even though I think there's still something there. But yeah, so that's your short answer to your question is yes, even on day one that happened.
So do you need structured activities to keep your mind off of work?
No, not really, not really. I mean, it's not like I'm thinking about work like when I'm not there. It's just that if there's some stimulation, something happens, right? But yeah, it's not the case where like it was in grad school or maybe in the earlier parts of my post-grad career where I was like always feel like I had to catch up and had something to do. Like I guess this is the first time, I mean, really where I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm in a reasonable place and like if I take a week off, nothing's gonna explode, right? So I don't feel that pressure. I do not feel that pressure to be like, oh my God, I gotta turn on some work, like not at all. So that's interesting. I don't feel that at all. But if some interesting stimulus comes in, then I like naturally think about future ideas.
Yeah.
But then I just kind of shelve that, and I have the confidence now to know like I'll pick that back up later if it's interesting. If it's not, who cares?
Yeah. So yesterday, on my wife's suggestion, we went to a tea shop and we were just reading, and like I hadn't read a book in a while.
You seem like such losers. I love it. Yeah. Okay. You haven't read a book for a while. Yeah.
And it was an incredibly engaging experience. I mean, the book was Thinking Fast and Slow.
Oh, that's like a serious book.
Yeah,
it's not like the Da Vinci Code or The Martian or something like fun. It's like a serious book.
It's not fiction, but
it's like a Nobel Prize winning book.
Yeah, but I guess what struck me was that when I was about to enter the tea shop, I was kind of afraid I was going to waste time. But taking some time away and reading something that's not directly related to your work, it was a really refreshing experience. So. I think vacations are good, but there is this workaholic temptation to not do anything.
Yeah, I haven't had that much problems with that lately. But yeah, I mean, I tried like a while back. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get back into reading I've never really read fiction, but like reading kind of nonfiction. So I had this backlog of Kindle books, not that many that I had. I'm like, I'm gonna try to get through. But every time I start, I'm just like, yeah, I'm kind of tired at night. I don't really care. So I don't really have problems sleeping. Like at night, if I just veg out, my default is just to watch YouTube because it's just easier to veg out on YouTube, on my phone or on the TV, than to be like reading and engage in a book. But I totally see that that is appealing. But for me, I feel like the book thing takes too much mental energy, but vegging out on YouTube doesn't take too much mental energy.
Yeah. So you're pretty happy with that routine?
Yeah. I don't feel like, I feel like I have this relationship with reading also, because I think a while back I was like, all right, I really should be reading something outside, get my mind off. And then I would kind of start and I'm like, I'm not really feeling this. I don't really read it. But back, I did go through periods where I read, I had a consistent book I was reading at night and stuff on the Kindle usually.
Yeah.
But not really lately. But I don't feel like that was a void that was there.
So that list that you had, is it still something you're interested in, or your list of books that a to-do?
Oh, like the stuff on my Kindle?
Yeah.
Yeah, not really. I kind of made a vow not to buy any more of them, and not that I have that many. Maybe I have 5, let's say, right? Yeah. But it was I impulse bought some book on the Kindle, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll read this sometime, and then I never do. So I'm I'm not gonna just impulse buy any more things on the Kindle, just because I'm not gonna read. I haven't read those 5. But I do not have a giant reading list at all.
Are any of those books a fun to read book, or?
Yeah, they're all fun to read. Yeah, they're not How to Succeed in Business or whatever, right? No, they're all nonfiction, Thinking Fast and Slow, but simpler. Yeah, they're all nonfiction, but interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, one of the last books I read, well, it's an academic book actually. It was someone's Ph.D. dissertation, but doesn't sound as bad as that. It was a book about internet trolls and online communities and how they get toxic and stuff. And it was actually out of someone's PhD work. And I was just always interested in, just casually in that, because, online discourse is so bad in so many ways. And it was very interesting. This woman did this really comprehensive, in-depth study. And she actually, made friends with a lot of these people who were internet trolls and try to get at their motivations and understand where they're coming from and stuff. And it was a very interesting book. It was an academic book because it was a PhD thesis, essentially turned into a book. But it was interesting how systematic it was. And this was 3 or 4 years ago. This is before all the fake news and, you know, all this hacking, all this stuff in the last year. This is like years ago. And now I'm sure all this stuff with bots and all these things is just amplified, you know, to the nth degree. But that was a book that was interesting reading, even though it wasn't really directly to my work.
Yeah, I'm pretty interested in trolls too. Do you? What do you remember from the book?
You can look it up. It's called "Why We Can't Have Nice Things." I think that's what it's called. Why We Can't Have Nice Things. And I think that's like a common catchphrase.
Mhm.
That's like an online meme or catchphrase. I think that's like what happens when online communities get spoiled. And then
Yeah.
that was the title of her book. You can look it up. But yeah, you know, books is one of those things where recreational books are those things where it's like everyone says it's like good for you, and now I feel like I should do that, but then I'm like I never really feel it. So that's my current relationship to books. But like in grad school, I read books and stuff, and I like, and even a few years ago I did, but just not really lately.
So what's the difference between grad school and being a professor in terms of like you found time for reading in grad school?
Oh, that's because I wasn't doing that much in grad school. Yeah, that was pretty simple. No, in grad I just wasn't doing that much. No, I mean that's straight up. Like I felt like I had more mental bandwidth to want to be engaged in something deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and the books were a good part. I mean, I didn't read a ton.
Yeah.
And in fact, some of the grad school stuff I read was, you know, ended up being tangentially interesting and related. So like some of the Stephen Johnson books about, you know, innovation and creativity, and his older books about like distributed creativity and those things. Like, you know, it all was, you know, loosely it's kind of like culturally tied to HCI stuff, even though it's not directly. So it was like, or things about like network science and like, you know, kind of popular science
Mm-hmm.
books about like wisdom of the crowds and networks and crowdsourcing and all that stuff that was bubbling up, long tail, all those things that were bubbling up in the last decade. Yeah, I mean, they're recreational books, but I thought that was, you know, kind of informed some of my tastes and stuff work-wise. But yeah, in grad school, like I wasn't super engaged in my work for the most part. So I had that craving for something else and in the time. But now it's like, I feel like at night and stuff, like I don't want to have any kind of mental engagement really. Because I feel like I'm pretty saturated mental engagement wise, and I want to like veg out as much as I can otherwise.
And that's been true pretty much your whole time as a professor?
More lately, more since I moved to San Diego, I think. I think it really amped up in, you know, I did 2 years at Rochester, and I actually read a decent amount then. Like I thought the pace then was reasonable. And then just the last 2 years it really amped up, or a year and a half, I guess. Just moving again, and it's a bigger school, and there's just more stuff setting up again, and like I feel like, you know, I don't know. I just, yeah, and also just life just got busier and stuff in general. So, yeah. So this is a long way of saying that I don't feel like the book niche needs to be filled like at this point. I mean, in the future, sure. You know, I'm not opposed to reading.
Yeah, I guess the fact that you can veg out on YouTube, that kind of means that your day was productive, or at least, yeah. Because like for me, I would feel guilty if like, I think that was where the workaholic nature came in, was like night, it'd be 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock p.m. I'd feel like I didn't get anything real done. And so you're just, I would just be spinning, just trying to output something because.
Wait, how come I mean, were you programming the whole day, or were you like just sitting on the whiteboard all day? I mean, it seems like you've got something done by PM.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I felt like I was in a catch-up mode, like for a lot of the PhD, just because.
Wait, are you talking about PhD in the last 5 years?
Oh, PhD.
Oh, yeah. That was just total wasting time. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. Wait. But in the PhD days, you're saying for me it was reading books at night. So for you, you were just feeling guilty about reading books or doing something.
I guess you know what? I probably did read more as a grad student than I do now. Yeah, because you just want mental stimulation, right? I think it's natural where if you're not making much progress on your work, then
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, no, I think doing grad school makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I mean, but the last 5 years you've been, you know, supposedly programming during the day. Night, you know, you still feel guilty about vegging out?
No, well, not so much. And like, you know, this reading habit, or my lack of a reading habit, I don't know what my conclusion is now, but I'm open to the idea that reading more could be.
Yeah, I think it's good. No, I mean, I'm not anti-reading. I'm pro YouTube.
Or let me put it this way: that like currently, I waste a lot of time doing clickbait, and it's not necessarily rejuvenating. You know what I mean? Like it's still mentally draining, but there's no real.
Is this article clickbait or videos?
Both. Yeah.
Okay, I think that the distinction article and video. So I think I rarely read articles online. Actually, I rarely read articles online, because I feel like the act of reading article clickbait would be draining, because I think like having to read stuff is draining.
Yeah.
But I feel like the videos are somehow different in that it's a bit more like vegetating watching TV. And I guess being selective about what you see also. Right? But yeah, I feel like the videos is somehow less draining than the articles. I feel like the articles you're still reading, it's like you're reading a book, except it's more clickbait. Reading is what really gets you. The reading clickbait is what gets you.
Yeah, and even if the topic isn't particularly enriching, like reading is still.
Yeah, reading takes that energy and saps it. Yeah. I'm just pretty anti-reading.
What are you watching on YouTube? You mentioned Magnus.
I still watch some Casey Neistat. There's this other guy. Okay, I forgot his name. His name's Peter something. He's like an associate of Casey Neistat. Peter McKinnon. He's a filmmaker also, and he mostly does like tutorials, kind of. I mean, he kind of does like camera and Photoshop tutorials, but then he also does the vlog where he takes the camera on the go, where he's like outside and stuff. And and his claim to fame was that he got to like 1 million subscribers really fast, like within like 9 months or something, like very, very fast. And he's only been vlogging for like a year or less, but I guess Casey Neistat probably helped him out, boost his popularity and such. But he has pretty good videos, and it's he has even higher production quality videos than Casey Neistat. So Casey Neistat uses basically Casey Neistat was known for using about roughly a $1,000 SLR camera with like a flexible tripod to vlog, which was a step up from like people using like little cameras and phones. So like most people who vlog just use one of these compact cameras, like $200-300 and with a little selfie stick, and that's fine for most things. But this is like crappy webcam. And then his whole thing was that he took it up to the next level where he used an SLR, which is pretty good quality for videos. And then he also set up his shot so that it would be third person, so you could see him walking through the scene. So it wasn't all selfies. So this guy, Peter McKinnon, he takes it up a notch still. His camera is like a $10,000 SLR. So he's like got a seriously heavy SLR that he uses. So his videos are like way more crisp. And he does like cinematic shots as well. So his like vlogs feel a bit more high production value and cinematic. And he's also I think he's like a photographer, a videographer kind of guy. But yeah, I was feeling that. And then there's like random people who do tech reviews and stuff with like just like gadgets and things. And this is like completely nonsensical, but that's what I've just been watching. Like random tech reviews of like expensive cameras and stuff. But that's what I'm saying. Like I don't feel it's draining at all. Like it's not watching like how to make how to make $10,000 on YouTube with clickbait or whatever. Like not like actionable things.
Do you make an active effort to stay away from stuff that would make you think about work? Because like when I'm on YouTube, I just naturally, I don't know, like the self-help stuff.
That's the thing. Like I mean, there's not a big genre of academic crap on YouTube, right? Except whatever I record. Right? And that's the thing. Right? Like I don't run into clickbait about research and stuff, right? Or about like writing grants and stuff. Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like if you're an entrepreneur, I feel like there's a ton of video clickbait about entrepreneurship and like self-motivation about entrepreneurship. I mean, you could view kind of faculty life as that too, but I don't really that much, right? Yeah, so I'm not tempted by clickbait videos of academic life. Not that they exist.
And that Peter guy, the Neistat's friend, what's an example of a good video he did?
I mean, none of them have been like particularly catchy, but like he just does intros about his like camera gear and like how he records and stuff. And then sometimes he's at like a conference or like I'm at some YouTube conference and he just kind of records his day and stuff. I mean, it's just entertaining, but it's not like it's not like actionable, right? I'm not like learning 5 tips for doing X.
You're not thinking about what kind of video you want to shoot?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, I'm not like I sell a crappy website. Right? You know, maybe in the future, right? Maybe this all seeds future ideas. But yeah, I'm not like, oh, I gotta buy a $10,000 camera now and like buy a studio setup and stuff.
Yeah.
But no, this is purely entertainment. But you know, these interesting real world work ideas come from entertainment, I think.
Oh, really? For you?
I think so. I mean, it's indirect, but yeah, I mean, I think, photography and videography and YouTube and all those stuff, I think those have always held an interest to me, right? So like, I wouldn't watch YouTube videos about knitting or something because I don't know anything about it, right? And like, it's too far away from anything I know for me to get into. But yeah, I mean, I was always interested in photography growing up and like wanting to make amateur videos and those things. So like, those have always been like latent interests, even though I haven't like really been, acting on them and stuff at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess it's all, you could say it's all related. But
nice, dude.
yeah, but it's not. I don't think it's. I don't fall into the clickbait trap.
Do you have any upcoming podcast videos that you like, ideas or nuggets?
I don't know. Well, that's not my vacation, right? I'm not trying to think of anything.
But is that in the work bucket in your mind?
I don't want it to be. No, I don't think so. No, it's not the work bucket. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this on one of the other videos. Is that like, I don't want to have it in the work bucket. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be like, oh crap, I got to plan another video next week. What did the subscribers want?
Yeah.
Let's look at the comments, see what the subscribers want. No. I mean, like, yeah, if you're trying to make money off of YouTube, then it's like every week you better crank out a video and you better like, hopefully you're passionate about it, but you're like planning out, right? It's like, all right, this week I'm going to a conference. I want to make a cool video on this, or I want to interview this person. I have a board that like lists all the stuff. Yeah, but I don't have anything. Yeah, it's completely blank slate.
Cool, man.
Yeah, completely blank slate. Yeah, no goading into work-related stuff.
So your vacation, like, you have a schedule or
in air quotes?
Well, what do
still in disbelief? Yeah.
Do you have planned activities or?
Yeah, that's the other silly thing. I mean, like, even though I say I don't plan anything, I mean, I'm like, I don't. I guess what I'm saying is, I wouldn't. So for this trip, I did not overplan, basically. So like, I have plans to see a few people and such, but like, that's I think like the minimal plan. Like, I could just like literally just go fill up my days and stuff. And,
yeah.
I could do the fill up my days, or I could fill up my days plus have a work agenda and fill up my days, and that would just be like every day just meetings, right? I'm not feeling that. So the closest analog to this was during grad school. A few times, twice or 3 times. I think I remember 2 of these trips, at least 3, maybe. Okay, so at the end of my first year, at the end of my second year, both times I was relatively clueless. At the end of my 5th year, where I had more of a clue, I went to Boston for a week, just by myself. It was because I had a lot of friends still there from grad school or working in Boston, and I had friends, whose couches I could stay on back then. I just kind of rotated around, a night or 2 with each friend, and that was like the closest to this experience I remember. I mean, I actually have a proper hotel like an adult, but like this idea of 1 week or 1.5 weeks and just going and talking to people and just being stimulated. Except the difference is that those 3 times, like, I felt like I filled up my schedule a lot more purposefully. And it wasn't like a work-related fill up. Like, it was just like I wanted to see everybody and as much as possible. Yeah. Kind of thing. And it was still all purely recreational for the most part. I saw some work people. But like this time, the trip is not, okay, can I fill up every hour with a meeting with someone I know in the Bay Area? Yeah. Like that's definitely not the case. Like I'll probably see a small handful of people. There's the small handful of people, which is the minimal plan I do now, or the ones I did in grad school vacation, which was still seeing mostly friends for the most part, but filling up as much as I can. And then the next level up, which I've never done, but people do, is like doing that fill up plus like having like being totally on with a work agenda and like doing like professional networking on, right? It's like you're visiting companies, you're visiting universities, you're like, crashing the nearest conference that you're not invited to just to go because you're in town. Like that's like way too hardcore. Like I have never felt that. But there are people who feel that, right? Like if you're going somewhere, even for a trip, you're like filling out, what's the work agenda I can push? What's the work agenda? Who can I schmooze with here? Yeah. So, like I've never actually felt that, but there are people who do, right? Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a super productive thing to do. I mean, me personally,
just the thought of it is very energy draining. But I mean, networking, like back-to-back professional meetings. But I imagine that's like, how important is that to being a?
I mean, my view is I've been okay so far. I think it's a personality-driven thing. Like I feel like I've so far hit the main high points that matter, and like a lot of the other stuff is great. I mean, I don't think it's bad. I think it's great, but it's to what extent you want to do it.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah. I mean, I feel like you could succeed either way. That's my general feeling right now. That I feel like I am on the low end of the professional schmoozing ladder, but it's still okay. It's just my own gut feeling is still okay. But yeah, there are people who are really feeling more like they, whenever they're on a trip, even with family or seeing friends and stuff, like if you're in there, I mean, my undergrad advisor was saying, I forgot whether he wrote this down in an advice guide or he was saying verbally, but he was like, if you're ever in a city, right, for a conference, for whatever trip, try to find people at the local nearest university and go like talk to them and try to give a talk and stuff. Like if you're in that area, right? So whatever city you go to, university, just hit those up, right? And like if you follow that, to the T, then you get a lot, right? But I'm just like, I've never actually felt that. So
what did that get you?
I mean, I just think all that just gets you people knowing about you and your work and stuff. But I feel like, I mean, part of it I think is it's useful that like, I'm reasonably visible online and stuff, so like people can Google for me and things.
Yeah.
Maybe this was more important back in the older days when things weren't online, right? Or maybe in fields that are. So my mom does this a lot actually. So she does a lot of these going around giving talks and all this stuff. I think she really maximizes that. I think she was in a field and she came up at a time where it was harder to get yourself known and to get things out without just word of mouth. It was just, that's literally the on the ground word of mouth, Literally that's what it is. Like wherever you go, on the ground word of mouth, they're talking about your work and you're talking about stuff, and that obviously works. I think nowadays with online, with things, it becomes a little easier, but still, I mean, people have the energy to do it. It's great. I don't think it's a bad thing at all.
Yeah, I guess some people would enjoy it, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think hitting it when it counts seems to be, my philosophy on this is to hit those things up when it has, perhaps the biggest impact or whatever. But again, I've seen people on all ends of the spectrum there.
Did you talk to people for advice like early on, and like how do I not make some terrible mistake in my first 2 years, like allocating time as an assistant professor?
Yeah, well, actually, I did a lot of that actually. Yeah, so I mean, I kind of see more chill now because this is my 4th year. I would say counting my postdoc year, this is like, I haven't had vacation 5 years. So it's like it's year 5 counting my postdoc. And yeah, very deliberate about that, about seeking out advice and like collecting notes and like, talking to people. Yeah, I was, if you had talked to me 5 years ago when I was going to start as a professor and during my postdoc year, that was what I really collected data on. Like I talked to people, I experienced things, I just advised students, I co-taught a class. Like I did a lot of that stuff, that note collecting. And I think that eventually settled down because eventually you start hearing the same thing again and again.
Yeah.
So yeah, the long answer to that is yes, I did do a lot of that early on.
And what are some of the top tips?
What are some of the top tips? I mean, I think I've internalized so much of it, I even forgot. I mean, yeah, I think I'm at that expert blind spot thing right now. I mean, not saying I'm an expert, but like, I'm at this blind spot thing where I'm like, I won't even know what to say to someone just starting out.
Oh, okay.
Because I've just been immersed in it so long. Like,
yeah.
I mean, not long, but reasonably. I would say, I don't know, I've written a bit about this too. So I mean, that's the nice thing about writing is that like I can write about this before I forget it all. So I think I have some articles I wrote from when I was like year 1, year 2. And I wrote a lot of this down, but I just forgot it all. I internalized it. I mean, it's the same thing as like if you like review papers, right? If you're on program committees reviewing papers, or you're on grant review committees reviewing stuff. Like the first time I was on the committees, or the second time even, like I would just take down a ton of notes, right? I'm like listening to people's discussions, like reading people's reviews, taking notes, like, oh, what seemed good, what seemed not good. And we kind of collected together. I did reflect a lot on that, to, thinking about what made for favorable reviews and not and stuff. And then now, like I do it, I'm like, don't take any notes, right? I'm like, all right, this is like the same thing people say every time. So I'm like, all right, I feel like I've internalized it.
Yeah.
But like, I definitely took a lot of notes up front about that stuff. But I wouldn't be able to like articulate it unless I really think about it, because now it's all like internalized.
How often do you read your old writing, like PhD grind? Because like I imagine that maybe there's like a disconnect between you now.
There is, I think. Yeah. No, it was funny because I just went back today, not really reading, but looking at some of the old articles, because I wanted to put together like a getting started guide. So like, my website now has, 400-ish, 300 something articles. We have like 100, 200 videos. So a lot of stuff on there. And like, I think the most common way people find it is Google for something. They land on something and then they see related pages with the same tag. So that's a fine thing. But I'm saying, like, if someone came right now just blind, they wouldn't really know where to go. There's like the newest things. There's some categories you can poke around. I mean, my homepage is very academic. So like I wanted to make like an overview page, just here are some cool starting points if you want to read about these 5 topics. It's just like a sampling. Then I looked over the titles of my articles just to kind of fill up that sample starting point page. And yeah, I haven't looked at them in detail, but yeah, I mean, some of the stuff probably I would still very much strongly advocate. Some of the stuff seems like a disconnect. But I think that is what, I mean, I feel like, yeah, I'm pretty reasonably confident that like anything I have up, I wouldn't be like embarrassed by.
Yeah.
Like, there was dates on them. So clearly I wrote this 10 years ago. So like, if you take that into context, I don't think I'm embarrassed by anything that is up there.
Yeah.
Even though, I probably have better perspective now on certain things. So.
Yeah, because I remember talking with a buddy of mine who was a PhD student, and like some people, they complain about academia, like, oh, these are the issues, like people don't respect this type of work, that type of gripe. And, I used to have similar feelings, but now, like, looking back, not so much. I mean, like, if you were to talk to me 10 years ago and be like, oh, how's your experience so far in the PhD? And like, what are you struggling with? Like, I'd have this long list of things, right? But like right now I look back and
long list of grievances.
I have a tough time, like, I have a tougher time defending that person's point of view, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fine. And yeah, I mean, that perfectly makes sense. And I think if we want to generalize this beyond the PhD, or just, anybody in the first parts of your career in a training phase or something, and looking back after you're more senior or experienced or kind of understand the field better, yeah, obviously your perspectives are going to be more naive, right? Otherwise it means you didn't grow at all, or you figured everything out. So, yeah, I don't think that's embarrassing at all. Given that you would qualify those things with, this is what I thought 10 years ago. Yeah.
I mean, because, I guess back then I was like, I wish professors knew this about students, right? Like, what are the list of things that you would tell the leadership of the department in terms of, how can we make student life better? And I think about what I would have said back then. And like today, I'm like, maybe it's, I don't know, a little misguided, or maybe that's too harsh too. Because I mean, you noted that while you're writing the PhD grind, like you had to write it then because otherwise you wouldn't know what you were actually thinking.
That's right. Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, and I would not have been able to write that now, 5 years later. No, there's no way.
Yeah,
to capture those feelings and nuances. And I'm perfectly fine with that out there because that's how I felt back then, right? And I'm obviously a different person now 5 years later, right? I mean, if I was like that, I felt exactly the same way. That means that nothing would have changed, right?
Yeah.
And I think I wrote about this also, but this is later on. It's just like, it's just this weird thing. I mean, this PhD thing is such a weird thing because, like, if we assume this cartoon figure of this 10 years or 10,000 hours or whatever, right? This 10 years roughly to mastery or to becoming somewhat of an expert in what you do, by definition, none of the PhD students, when they get out of the program, have reached that 10 years, right? It's like, if you reach 10 years, it means you did really bad, right? It's like a regular PhD is not going to get to that 10-year mark. And that means that you get out always not having that satisfaction of reaching that other side. Like nobody has reached that. And it's weird because in order to I wrote stuff on this, but like in order to get to the 10-year mark, you have to have done well enough in research in your PhD to be able to keep getting jobs where you keep doing the research.
Right?
And if you don't, then it's fine because you could do, there's a lot of industry stuff you can do. That's perfectly fine, especially in CS. But you never get that satisfaction going full circle. What was this PhD or research world all about? Like, I feel like there's no way to get that full circle until you get to around that 10-year mark. So like pretty much 95% of PhD students never get that satisfaction at the end. And they go on to have fine and great careers. But I feel like if you talk to a lot of people who've had even good careers, out in industry and doing stuff, I think they always feel like their PhD was like, yeah, that was like a thing. Like I didn't really get the full picture. I kind of did it. I kind of got out. And now I'm in industry. I do stuff. And that's like the majority opinion. That's what I feel like it is. And like very few people actually get the chance to see that full circle. I mean, I'm not saying this is like the best thing ever. I'm saying that's just one thing, right?
Yeah.
But you do need to get to that 10-year-ish mark and also like be able to, serve on committees and see how the sausage is made more in detail and in a more detailed way to finally like, oh yeah, I kind of get that now.
Can you mention any insights you've gotten? Like articulate what that feels like to get to the other side?
I mean, the simplest, I say simplest, but like, it's like what makes for papers that have high chances of getting accepted to like the conferences in your field. That's like a classic one. I mean, it's an important one because that's what you're trying to do, right? So, every field in computer science or an HCI, they're conference-based. I mean, other fields, there's journals, but like there's the top 2 or 3 venues you're trying to publish in, journals, conferences, whatever. And I think, after you do enough projects, you serve on enough committees, you read enough papers, you read enough submissions. I mean, not only just reading papers, but reading failed papers too, right? Reading a bunch of submissions that didn't make it.
Yeah.
So your classifier is a bit better, right? Because otherwise you only see successful papers.
Yeah.
Right? You see a bunch of the failed papers and common reasons for failure. And then I feel like after that, it's like this, you kind of hone your taste on like, what is an interesting and novel enough contribution, but what is not so far off that the community isn't going to value it, right? And that's such a hard line. It's not, there's no clear line, right? Because you get a different set of reviewers, the line will be drawn differently. It's a battle that's fought everywhere in research. Is like, how much novelty should there be versus how much attachment should you have to your prior work, right? Like if you do something completely different, then if it's not sufficiently attached, it might seem out of scope or like unbounded and stuff. And if your stuff is too attached, and people will just complain that it's too incremental and it's like not novel enough or not a big enough contribution kind of thing. And that's just something that's just so I don't have an easy answer if I tell a first year, your third year, fifth year grad student, like how do you do that? I don't have a good answer at all. And the more I'm in it, the less of a good answer I have.
Do any of your conferences use the website Open Review?
No.
Oh, okay. Because I do a fair amount of reading of AI papers these days, and the AI community heavily uses Archive, and they heavily they at least somewhat use Open Review.
Interesting.
And it's cool that you can see for ICLR submissions, like the rejections too.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize that. Huh.
And so like you can see like weak accepts or they're kind of lower tier, and like. This would have been huge for me in grad school because you just get your own rejects, you get your own rejects, you get your own reviews for your rejected papers. And your neural network only trains on, like 3 reviews and
they're all like rejects. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Huh. That's really fascinating. I mean, I guess some places are moving toward more open models for that, but it's still not the mainstream, I think. That's still a minority. But I think, exactly. And also just like the chance for grad students to review papers or be on these committees or those things. And it's like a hard balance, right? Because on one hand, you want people serving on committees that are, more senior and more well calibrated. But on the other hand, how do they get there, right? Like you got to train them somehow, right? Someone has to like do it, it has to be a first time sometime, right? So there are like methods where people like, have they have like sub reviewers and those things, but I don't know. There's not an ideal way. I haven't really thought much about that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I was going to ask something else. Shoot, my bad. Yeah, sorry. If you have
that up later. Yeah, I mean, now you're just wading into academic minutia, so like wading deep into minutia. But like, I don't know, just popping up a level. It's just like, I think that I'm currently at a point where like I feel like I have a reasonable grasp of assistant professor life, right? I mean, in
Yeah.
the last few years, like, I feel like I've gotten to the point where I can, I mean, I obviously could have taken vacation stuff before, but like, there was always something that came up, right? Either family stuff or work stuff or moving and things. So like, the last 5 years have been pretty tumultuous, just like life and work wise, just transitioning. So this is really the first winter break that I'm like, oh yeah, like there's not a giant transition.
So what would previous winters look like for you?
What previous winters? That's a great question. I mean, in theory, winters I should have off in theory. Summers are kind of tumultuous because like I was like either moving like several summers. I mean 3 summers. Out of the 5 summers, 3 of the summers I was moving, right? It's like ridiculous, right? I mean like moving like house and everything, right? That's like really really disruptive. And then other summers I was like I would visit MSR, Microsoft one summer, so that was kind of tumultuous. Thinking about job hunting again and things. Oh yeah, so in theory my winter should be off, but in practice, like I always just like want to do more work, right? Because I was like I have energy, right?
Yeah.
So one of the winters I spent writing a grant proposal, which was not a great idea, but like I had energy. It was my first year and stuff. I really am not a fan of deadlines being right in the beginning of January for papers and for grants, because I'm just like it just like kills everybody's winter break. But I mean, whatever. I'm not in charge of that.
Yeah.
So and then other winters I've just like used that time to like march forward. Right? I'm like, oh yeah, I have 2 weeks, 3 weeks free. Concentrated flow time. I mean, I felt good about those winters. I'm like, oh, flow time, right?
Yeah.
No meetings, no anything. I'm gonna hack on something. I'm gonna write something. I'm gonna push forward on something. Yeah, so it was a lot of my winters just pushing forward time. Great, 2 or 3 weeks, let's push forward. And this winter I could have done the exact same thing. I mean, I have stuff I could do, right? I mean, I could be like winter break, 2 or 3 weeks, great flow time, concentration time. Let's push forward.
Yeah.
But I decided this time, the first time, I'm like, let's actively not push forward this winter. Like, things will move on if I just take like these 2 weeks, at least 1 week off, the other week, semi off. I'm like, it'll be okay. Like I don't need to really push forward. But yeah, the default is, hey, look, I'm well rested. Just push forward.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that you've gotten to a point where you feel comfortable taking a week off.
How about you? I mean, like when you have, let's say, 2 week stretch in winter, whatever. I mean, like you can always push forward, right? So what is your philosophy?
Yeah.
It's not like you have a company job and everyone takes 2 weeks off, right?
Yeah, I guess I take a lot more breaks like during work. I mean, like I will, what am I trying to say? I don't press hard enough where I feel like I burnt out, therefore I need to recover.
So you're just continuously kind of going, but
I mean, and I think if I were to change that, I'd probably burn out a little more, like go more intense and then rest.
Actually have a real rest.
Yeah.
So you've never felt the need to real rest for a week or 2?
No.
No. So 5 years, never.
Well, actually, like when I go home, I'm not trying to rest, but for some reason,
you're just lazy at home.
Yeah, family time. Like my parents are watching TV, and I'm just like,
okay.
Yeah.
So it's a forced rest. Yeah, that's good.
I mean, but it's like,
but do you feel guilty about it?
No.
You don't feel guilty.
It just feels like, I mean, this is undergrad too. I remember when I went to UCSD for undergrad, and then I would, occasionally spend a weekend at home.
Oh, okay, even during the school year.
During the school year,
yeah.
And
kind of veg.
I would bring a backpack full of books and like just never open them. Yeah.
You'll be fine. You wouldn't feel guilty.
I don't know. Yeah, it's just this. I mean, it's probably similar for you when you're taking a break. Is that like you feel this, like your intuition is telling you, okay, now's a good time for a break.
Yeah.
I think when I visit home, similar thing where I feel like.
Well, I mean, I understand being a student. I mean, undergrad especially. So when I went, I mean, it was nice because I had a long flight, right? So like Boston, Cambridge, and MIT was really intense for a semester. I actually likened this break to being home. The closest feeling actually is being home from college. So, really intense for a semester, and you're living in the Northeast. It's like cold and dreary, and then you get to fly home and be with my parents' house and my old room at home and stuff. This is like 15 years ago, and then it was like a completely different setting. No homework, no anything. It's like it was like winter break or spring break. I don't think I did that much spring break, but like summer or winter or whatever. And it was nice because it was like quiet. I had a room by myself. I didn't have to, be in a loud dorm with, apartments with people around. It's quiet. I could just sleep in. I had nothing actually to do. So I would just like, browse the internet, just whatever, really chill, do some writing on my, crappy early website, whatever. That felt like a real break, contrast with school. But, I could see what you do that in college and mid-grad school, but like, what about, you could always work on Math Papa. You can crack out the laptop, always working. So in the past 5 years, vacation time, have you still had that feeling?
I think when I visit home, it's still a special like it's if I'm up north and I'm not working, I feel guilty. But when I'm home, something in my brain flips where I tell myself it's okay.
How long do you spend at home the longest?
Like 5 days maybe.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty good. So it's like this 1 week thing that I have.
Yeah.
And you drive back up.
Sometimes I fly. Yeah,
that's pretty good. I'm feeling that. So I guess those are your natural breaks then.
Yeah. So
you're not actively trying to take a break.
That's right. Like when I'm with family, I don't have to pull myself away. Like yeah.
And how about like you're not worried that something's going to go down with the site or like something's up, you're not worried some emergency happens in 5 days.
Early in the history, I was, what time is it?
I think we're good.
Yeah. Earlier on, I was a lot more stressed out. Like even when there were only 40 people on the site, I'm just like, oh no, like these 40 people are going to be disappointed and it's going to be over. But like these days, I don't know. Yeah.
So I guess you've also, it's kind of like my situation, like you've gotten to a point where things seem more stable too. It's like, stuff is going, but it'll be fine kind of thing.
Yeah. Hey, Phil, I want to ask you, so back to professor talk. Like if I'm a second year PhD and I'm under you and I say, hey, Phil, I got a good idea for a project and your intuition is saying it's not good. Can you articulate why it's not good? Like in a way that's satisfying to me?
I've had to have this conversation so many times for real. So so my students are gonna watch this, and I don't have a great answer to that, except what I would do is I think my model is actually, I have my students understand the parameter space, right, of like what I do or what I know how to do. They know my papers, they know what I do, and I would try to get them when we're in this early stage projects is to do like a classic brainstorming thing is we're going to generate a bunch of ideas and throw them out there on a giant whiteboard. And then, your thing that you generated is one of many.
Okay.
And then what I would end up doing is eventually, we just did this with one of my students. It's like, let's say you put up, he spent some time, put up 5 things. So I say 5's a number. And your thing you think is great, it might be one of them. And then, just like generate 5 things. And then out of those 5, I have a pretty good idea. I'm like, all right, this thing is super. I guess I have an explanation. It's like, this is a super crowded space a lot of people are in. So you're going to have I guess my argument would just be the argument from like, here's my heuristic to predict how much pain it would be to try to get this published.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, this could be a great idea. It's great, but I think it'll be painful to get it published because of these reasons.
Okay.
Like there's 5 people right now working on this and you're going to be viewed as incremental, or like, this is way outside of HCI and like, or like, this is going to involve a lot of machine learning and I don't know anything about machine learning. So this is a great idea to like throw a bunch of machine learning to like, I'm just going to make something. I was like, let's throw a bunch of deep learning to do better compiler error messages. I'm like, great idea in theory. I have no idea how we're going to do this well because I don't know deep learning. Right? So like, that's a great idea out of scope of what I do. And then another one is like, it's pretty solid, but there's a ton of people on this and like, it's really incremental. It'll be hard to pull yourself away from the pack. And then, maybe hopefully there's one that's like, okay, this seems like there's something here. Let's dig into this area and then let's try to expand that out and brainstorm on those 5. And then eventually we start getting somewhere. So I think that my model would be, I wouldn't just have my students dream in a vacuum. I'd be like, here's some parameter space and then let's dream and then let's pick 1 or 2 that's most promising. And then let's keep dreaming off those. And then eventually something gels a bit more from there. So it'll be a back and forth process rather than the student generates something and I say yes or no. And then they generate something else blindly and I say yes or no. Because then that'll be like really hard to. Yeah. So
as a student, do you remember similar things where you were the student or?
Not really, because my advisor wasn't hands-on with what I was doing.
Okay.
I had no closed loop. I had was completely open loop.
Okay.
And part of that was because I was on fellowship and I was kind of doing my own thing and stuff. And his closed loop projects were all, related to Klee and the stuff that everyone else is kind of doing.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a closed loop thing. And I think that was probably to my detriment. I didn't have that.
Yeah, because I look back at my experience and like I'd be given a starter project and then it wouldn't go so well, and I'd be like, oh, let's switch projects because clearly this isn't going so well. Whereas now I look back, I'm like, hey, wait a second, like why didn't I push harder on trying to find like what's the related work that gets published and like steer it into something that's promising as opposed to just completely jumping ship and starting over.
Yeah, no, I feel like that's part of the advisor's responsibility, right? Yeah, I feel like it's very hard for a first or second year student to know how to do it. I mean, I think it's great if some students know how to do that. I mean, that's like you're already, on top of your game, right? But yeah, I think then it's on the advisors to really do that steering. And I think this is part of the difference between having someone who's really hands-on the topic and having someone who's more hands-off, right? I mean, just generalizing, right?
Yeah.
If someone's more hands-off on the topic, if they have a lot of students, they have a lot of different kinds of areas, it's like, oh yeah, just like come with something interesting, we'll see.
Yeah.
But if someone like me is fairly junior and fairly kind of hands-on with the space and the stuff I do is fairly narrow, then I would probably have a more direct way to, so the steering and pivoting is a great idea of like, okay, like this didn't work and such, or like this felt like it was kind of lame, but what can we learn from this? And what, you've gotten smarter somehow in the last 3 months doing this. So how can we apply this to something else that's good, rather than, all right, let's ditch the whole thing entirely, scrap, let's do something else completely different.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Like before I was more of a woe is me, but now I'm like, darn it. Like you should have done.
Well, I mean, no, I don't think the students wouldn't know how to do that, right? I mean, I think that's a big part of the advisor's job. And I think it's just different advising styles and such, right? I mean, I don't think this is something that people would figure out naturally on their own. I mean, some people might. Hopefully, after listening to this podcast, everyone does. Right? Everyone will know the secret now. But yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
How would you mentor a student who is with a hands-off advisor? Because like I think that's a common situation, right? Early student, hands-off advisor.
Oh, like what would I say?
Yeah, first project not going so well.
It's like a chess move. Magnus Carlsen. Yeah. Oh my God.
Like, could you help me? Could you help me from 10 years ago? Like knowing everything you know now, you're my friend.
I would say if you're struggling with this, to switch to a really hands-on advisor. That would be, I think that would be the easiest solution. I think that would be the easiest solution. And yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's the perfect solution, but that would be for what you are seeking, which is a more actionable set of goals to try to get stuff published. That would be the best way to go about it.
Yeah.
But if it turns out that the more hands-off advisor is in an area you're really passionate about, and the next person who's really hands-on is an area that you don't really like that much, then you have to choose. And that's hard. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really hard.
Yeah.
It's no good advice.
Yeah, because I tell my wife about some of the struggles I had, and she's like, this should have been a lot easier. Like, what's your problem? And it's like 10 years later, I'm still like,
So why does she think it should have been easier?
I think she just knows success stories from other people, and she's like, what's wrong with you?
But what are success stories? Like, what was that example of success?
I mean, people who finish in 4 years, get a thesis award, start a company, sell for 20 mil,
All right, if we judge against that metric, then everyone's a failure. But then you can judge everybody. I mean, like that's in any field. If you just judge against the top people, then everyone's a failure.
Yeah, I guess in undergrad, if someone does pretty well, you're like, that's achievable. Whereas in the PhD, like sometimes there's a level of performance where you're like, okay, like
Magnus Carlsen.
I can be satisfied even going below that, right?
Yeah. Even if you're not Magnus Carlsen, you'll be okay. I don't know. I mean, in a way, it's like now in my current position, I feel like I actually don't want to advise. I mean, my own students, I'll definitely be very open with and talk to about this because they're my students. But like, I feel like with other people's students who are my colleagues, I I don't want to give advice in a sense, because I feel like I have somewhat of a weird conflict of interest, right? Because I don't want to be like, whoa, like Phil told me to leave her my advisor, right? Like, well, I don't want to say that, right? And then on the other hand, even if I feel like they shouldn't be switched, I don't want to say that, oh, you should just stay with your advisor. I should leave. Like either way, I feel like I don't feel like I'm in a comfortable position to say anything.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's almost like, it's not the greatest analogy, but I mean, I don't love the parenting analogy to advising because it seems very like paternalistic, but it's like I don't want to tell other people how to parent their kids, right? It's kind of like that, right? I mean, not saying that grad students are kids, but like it's kind of like that feeling. It's like it's not my place to say what your relationship with your parents or your advisors and stuff is. Like that's not my role. I mean, if you're my own student, then I'm really open and honest with how things are going and stuff, and such. But yeah, for other people's students, I don't like want to interfere. I mean, I can talk about the research if they want to ask me questions about specific projects and what I think. I can be very open about my feelings about that. But I'm like, this is your project, you're working on your group. I'm not running this project, right? This is just my view of it.
Yeah. How often do you talk with random students about their work?
I mean, not that much directly. I mean, we have lab meetings and like, people give talks and stuff, and I'm on people's like thesis committees and stuff. But like, yeah, I mean, I give feedback and stuff, but not, people can ask me about things or have meetings. But yeah, I mean, I don't seek it out. And such, because I have like way too many other meetings.
So what percentage of your schedule these days, like during the quarter, is filled with meetings?
I try to minimize it, but I don't know. I mean, it's not that much. I mean, it's I wouldn't say it's that much. I try to, again, I feel like I'm on the minimal end as an assistant professor of the professional schmoozing event things, and I'm on the minimal end of meetings. At least I try to be.
Does it take skill to do that?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I think so. I mean, I would say it's skill, but it takes like not being afraid to like of missing out or say no or things. Yeah, I don't say no to everything, obviously, but yeah, I mean, if for example, like if more senior people in my department want to meet about work-related stuff or about, I always say yes, right? It's like the more proximal they are, like the more I say yes, right? I mean, if someone is directly senior in the department or it's like something about the department, so yeah, of course, I go to everything. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of my professional role, right? But if it's like something more distant in the university, like a different part of the university and stuff, then maybe I'm more likely to say no to things. It's like, all right, they're going to ask a bunch of people. If it's like outside the university, kind of more, the farther the peripheral is, the less bad I feel about saying no to things and just saying like I'm too busy for X.
Okay.
But it does take an effort to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like I'm okay doing that. Like I feel reasonably confident doing that. But yeah, so I mean that's a very much a practicality thing of like, yeah, I mean for the people that are the closest in the department side, yeah, I say yes to everything.
Yeah.
These are your direct colleagues there, so yeah. But the more distant it is, the less likely I might do some things.
Because I remember an earlier blog you wrote where you had a picture of your schedule. It was basically full, right? And
yeah, that was like on my postdoc. I mean, that was like, there's this kind of meeting fetish thing too, right? Of like early on, you might want to have a lot of meetings, both because you're energetic about doing your work and also because you want to like explore more opportunities or talk to people or get feedback and stuff. And I think that's part of being earlier on. I think it's great. I mean, I did a good amount of that earlier on, but then as I guess you get later on, I want to make more time for the deep work, right? And the more flow time. And I think people understand that.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, I guess maybe my way of putting it, another more straightforward way of putting it is like, I feel like at the moment, at least, I am not lacking in terms of like ideas to implement. And I'm just lacking in terms of time and sustained attention to do it. So like, perhaps early on in my career or in grad school, whatever, it was great to go to these trips and pack up my days with meetings and like read all these books. It was great because that fed all these raw materials because I didn't have stuff back then that I was really feeling. But now I feel like, the train has left the station and it just needs to keep going for a while. And I have stuff going. So like, for example, like if for some reason I did like a whole week thing where if I just schmooze with a bunch of people, wrote a lot of notes, watched a lot of TED Talks, like went to like inspiring retreats and stuff and got all these ideas, like, I don't know what to do with all that, right? That would just be excess. Like, I would just all bounce off me because I'm like, all right, this is all great and all, but I have like 5 things I got to do, I want to push out in the next year.
Yeah.
All those, I'm just making a number of 5, these 5 papers or whatever things are in motion for the next year or 2. It's execute time to get them out.
Yeah.
All these great ideas from TED Talks and schmoozing and stuff, that's great, but shelve this for the next few years. And I don't need that. I don't quote unquote need that inspiration right now. Maybe one of these things will turn into something awesome, but I feel like I have enough on my plate now that's moving forward that I'm like, what I'm in need of is that focused time.
Yeah.
And not the external stimulation to inspire a new direction and such. Maybe later on I will need that, right? But not now.
Yeah. I remember, how much time do we have, Phil?
Yeah, whatever. We got 10, 15 minutes, whatever you want to go for.
Yeah, I just remember early on in the PhD, a lot of my time was, as you described, just external stimulation, and you generate all these ideas, and then you're like, none of them really met the bar. And then you go back to it, you watch more TED Talks. But at some point, you, or at least for me, there was this intuition okay, these ideas, they're good enough to get started.
Right.
Do you have any ideas as to how to accelerate that process? In terms of for someone who's kind of spinning their wheels just with external stimulation, how do you get to the state now where you're in, where you don't feel that need to generate ideas? You're happy enough with the ones that you have to push on?
Another hard question. Hey, you're asking the hardest questions. I feel at the grad student level or the trainee level, I feel again, there has to be that two-way with your advisor. I feel I did the same thing too at grad school. And I feel the individual grad student trying to spin on stuff with external stimulation, it's like throwing darts at a dartboard kind of blindly. That's so hard to hit anything. I think it's extremely, extremely hard. And I think the more traditional, the reason why most people go through their PhDs and don't have as much of the struggle as we do is that there is this closed loop session with your advisor, right? It's your advisors, I'm just making something, your advisor works on, cryptography or whatever. They work on, applied cryptography on the web or something. That's their specialty. So they have you read these papers and you're like, all right, what's the latest thing? Maybe let's make some JavaScript library for cryptography on the web because JavaScript's gonna be big now. So all right, let's explore that. What are some limitations with browser security and let's go back and forth between can we make a browser extension? Can we prove something about this? And go back and forth. And what are other people doing? And then I think your ideas between the advisor and student bounce back and forth, and you hone in on okay, my next project is about doing some proof about something in a subset of JavaScript that does some kind of security mechanism. Right? All right, that's really crisp. Let's do it. Right. And then you hopefully get that published. And then you do something else that's a follow-up. And it's not a student just oh, let me just do something with crypto. I don't know anything about it. Let's watch a TED Talk. Then let's do something with web security. That open loop thing is just so hard. So we just we just both bottomed out. I think that the real secret in grad school is that it isn't always an open loop thing. But then the answer, to the bigger question of what about afterward, right? You don't have an advisor. If you're doing your own business or you're actually a professor, and for example, my position, no one is, and that's the kind of scary, not scary thing about being, a PI or, a researcher or a professor. It's there is not open. I don't have an advisor. No one is telling me well, this is a stupid idea or whatever, right? I'm in very much the same position you were in the first, second year of grad school. And I think, the answer to that would just be, I'm just way more calibrated now to what the expectations of the academic community is, so that I kind of know when to stop and the heuristics and stuff. So that's just having that 10 years of experience.
Yeah. And for me, part of it is that early on, there were no roots. So you're just the whole search space is open because you don't really have an expertise. And so you don't want to, or I feared going after a local optimum when there's this much bigger global.
But what is the global optimum? You have a paper that solves all the problems. What is a global maximum? No individual paper is going to be some global.
Yeah, the equivalent of double helix for CS,
First year of grad school. I'm just really feeling it. Your Nobel Prize winning.
Or Claude Shannon, his thesis was pretty tight,
All right, you're comparing yourself to Oxford. Fine. No one's really feeling it. Alan Turing or something, one page or maybe.
Yeah. These days, there's naturally a smaller search space because you go adjacent to what you've already done.
Yeah. So I think part of that is the starting out. And I mean, I guess my only advice there would just be to anchor. I mean, again, that anchoring, right? You're anchoring yourself to an advisor or a research area that you feel has some promise and push, and then that anchor gives you that that thing, right? I mean, like the the stuff with deep learning now with Fei Li and her students, and the past 10 years at Stanford, like it wasn't like everyone dreaming out of the blue. It's a very synergistic thing.
Yeah.
And, Kaparthi and some of the other folks who came out of that group. It's like it wasn't just like someone dreaming in a vacuum, right? It's like they obviously are really smart and like they knew their math and programming and stuff, but they attached to this really great group and they were really feeling it and they had some industry connection and stuff and like everyone felt it. Right?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't just like in a vacuum, some smart guy doing math. Right?
Yeah.
So like I think that's more often. I mean, this is like the Stephen Johnson books, right? It's like this kind of distributed creativity, right? It's very rarely this like one person individually completely.
Yeah.
In that, but it's hard. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good answer.
I guess the tidbit I got from that was that you want to latch on to somewhere where there's action, like besides yourself, right? Like
yeah.
So that way, if someone comes up with something, then there's that extra, like the adjacent possible, right? Like there's that new thing you could try. Whereas like if you're just trying to create this giant wave by yourself, like that's
there's also timing, right? It's like if you had started grad school, 4 or 5 years later, you could have gotten on that deep learning curve, right? And like you would have been that first batch of grad students where people were feeling deep learning and building off each other really fast.
Yeah.
It's like you came in several years too early, so there was nothing to build on.
Yeah.
I mean, in retrospect, given you started in 2006, what do you think would have been an era you would have been in that would have been more concrete in terms of building blocks? Or what do you think with machine learning, would have been that, or is that too early?
I mean, I think machine learning could have worked. I think databases or, just information management, it could have worked had I been more mature going in. Like, like I'm really hard on myself, but I think part of the difficulty was that I was catching up on the computer science. Like, I was electrical engineering undergrad and I took a few software classes, but like my CS background was not, it was below average, I would say, out of our class of 40. And like, so you're catching up there and then you're trying to learn the research game. Like it was a lot, I think. That was a big challenge.
Yeah, I mean, do you think if you went into like computational bio or something where everyone had to catch up, right, and learn bio stuff and like genomics and stuff, do you think you would have a better chance there? Because like you would have just had to catch up with everyone else who had to learn it, even from a CS background.
I mean, I think maybe for me, the big trap I fell into was like I love to dream in like the white paper. I mean, just like a sheet of paper in a vacuum, like. That appealed to me. I mean, that intuition was very wrong, but like, how do you tell someone that? How do you tell someone that like that's not a fruitful way, or that's not likely? I mean, because anything's possible, right? But that's not likely to be a fruitful way to do research. Like,
yeah, and so maybe the answer there is just giving models of process, right? Of like kind of behind the scenes look or kind of models of how successful projects come out, even very theoretical projects, right? So like. Maybe a great model for that would be for you to talk to older students who are in even more theoretical fields and see how their process. I mean, didn't Terrence Tao write a bunch of blogs about process or something?
Yeah.
About how the process of doing pure math, and it's not just dreaming. I mean,
yeah.
They do simulations sometimes, right? He like writes some code to like do some simulations. Even Shadden did that, right? Like you would write code to like do some simulations, crude simulations, do some analysis, build some intuition, do some graphing, and like. Really feel that, and then you would do some drawings and stuff and like talk to people. So like, yeah, so I think maybe having models of what a successful project is could help in that.
Yeah.
Instead of reading TED Talks, instead of looking at TED Talks and like reading Claude Shannon, dream books,
paulgraham.com,
and Richard Feynman stories and stuff, just really dreaming and stuff.
Feynman, I had to binge recently. His videos are awesome. Like, I guess this is old news for a lot of people, but
like the intro physics.
Yeah, the ones at Cornell in like '64.
Yeah. No, I mean, I started looking at some of those a long time ago, but I haven't watched, anything in detail. But you're just like really feeling the educational videos. So, would you ever want to like record your own lessons and stuff, like for real in earnest, or are you just like, those already exist, like whatever, I don't want to repeat it?
I was more enthusiastic at one point. I think now, the things that exist are not exactly the way I would present them, but like close enough. Like the utility added by
Yeah.
creating a new one, I don't think it's high enough to justify.
Yeah, that's what I feel as well. I mean, like I mean, same thing with like making MOOCs or things. That's like, yeah, it's like obviously if you made your own, you spent a lot of time. It's the way you want to do it, but you know, a lot of stuff is already out there.
Yeah.
It's a huge time investment in it.
Do you have an opinion on MOOCs?
I don't have a super strong opinion. I mean, they're there, and they continue to be there, and they're I mean, they're hoping to find a sustainable business model, and people pay for them, I guess. Right? I mean, some amount of people pay for them.
Yeah.
Or they're corporate sponsors or something. And it's still good that they're all up there, but I don't see it in terms of, at least the R1 universities, I don't see that in terms of disrupting, you know, large research universities. I mean, I feel like that hasn't been on the topic of conversation for a while, of like R1 universities changing stuff because the MOOCs are there. You know, maybe these community colleges, they have partnerships with these smaller colleges might change things. Maybe they might go to kind of hybrid model or whatever, but you know, but yeah, I mean, kind of the major universities that we're all familiar with, it seems like a kind of a blip and like nothing really changed.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, it's still fine that they're there. I mean, I think it's great for people all around the world, right? I mean, international, I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, like picking up AI, like they were super useful to me. So they're definitely a benefit to society.
Yeah, especially worldwide, right? So like people, I mean, it's really practical. Right? It's like if you want to get a programming job, you watch a lot of these videos, you do these exercises, and you can like interview for programming jobs, you know, remote jobs or something. Like you can really change your life. So, and you can do it for free, you know, for the most part. I mean, not just MOOCs, but just having free online video stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think it's all, in my view of it, is that, you know, the internet is a big place. And if people fund this stuff and it's up there for free for the most part, like it's good, right?
Yeah.
I'm feeling that.
That's tight, dude.
It's a great positive note to end on. I'm feeling this. So this is an in-person, rare in-person session here. Let's see how, let's feel how long this went for. All right, we're going to stop broadcast?
Yeah.
Go for it.